She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." The room erupted in laughter. I didn't. I just smiled and stayed quiet. But when she came back from her little weekend getaway, her tea didn't taste right, and the neighbor made sure she knew why. You see, my girlfriend Jessica and I had a fundamental disagreement about reality itself. I believed that if you live in someone's house, eat their food, and use their Wi-Fi, you're in a partnership. Jessica, on the other hand, believed she was the sun and I was just some insignificant planet trapped in her orbit. We'd been together for 2 years. For the last 6 months, she'd been living in my house. My name was on the mortgage, the bills, and the little plaque by the front door that read the Wilsons. She had bought it without asking me, and in hindsight, it seemed wildly optimistic. Me? I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I like my quiet life. I work from home as a graphic designer. I have a couple of close friends, and my idea of a wild Friday night is trying a new brand of frozen pizza. Jessica, however, was nothing like that. Her life was one long performance, and her audience was her 3 best friends, a shrill Greek chorus I privately nicknamed the Harpies, Tiffany, Brittany, and the third one, I can never remember her name. Let's call her Chardonnay. The conflict that set everything in motion happened just last weekend. I was making dinner when Jessica waltzed into the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, already dressed to go out, carrying on a loud, one-sided conversation with the Harpies. "Oh my God, yes, I am so in," she squealed. "A weekend away is exactly what I need." "No, he's not coming. Don't be ridiculous." She hung up, spun toward me with a dazzling smile, and declared, "Good news. The girls and I are going to the lake for the weekend. We're leaving tomorrow." That was the first I'd heard of it. "Sounds fun," I said calmly, stirring the pasta sauce. "Which lake?" A simple, normal question. One any sane couple would consider perfectly reasonable. Jessica, however, stared at me as though I'd just asked her to recite quantum physics in ancient Greek. She burst out laughing, then turned to Tiffany, who had just walked through the door. "Can you believe him?" she scoffed. "He wants to know where I'm going." Tiffany sneered at me like I was some outdated piece of furniture she was ready to throw out. Jessica turned back, hands on her hips, and delivered the line that would echo through my future. "Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." By then, all 3 Harpies had gathered in my kitchen. Their cackling laughter filled the room, a symphony of mockery. To them, it was peak comedy. A man in his own house daring to ask where his live-in girlfriend was going. I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, pasta sauce dripping onto the floor. But I didn't get angry. I didn't argue. Instead, something inside me shifted. A strange, zen-like calm washed over me. It was as if the part of my brain trying to salvage this relationship had quietly packed its bags, put on a little hat, and walked out the door forever. I looked at her smug, smiling face and gave her the biggest, friendliest, most hollow smile I could muster. "You know what?" I said cheerfully. "You're absolutely right. My mistake." They laughed again, convinced I was backing down. Jessica even patted me condescendingly on the cheek before they swept out of the house on their way to some pre-weekend cocktail hour. The kitchen fell silent. Only the bubbling of the sauce broke the air. I stood there for a long moment and then whispered to myself, "Okay, got it. Not married, no say." But in my mind, a far more interesting plan had already begun to take shape. The weekend was going to be fun after all, just not for her. Update 1: the second Jessica's car disappeared down the street, no doubt packed with glitter, Ross, and enough makeup to supply a theater troupe, I sprang into action. My first move wasn't packing. It wasn't cleaning. It was reconnaissance. I walked next door to Mrs. Gable's house. She's an 80-year-old widow with a sweet smile, a prize-winning rose garden, and a neighborhood surveillance system that would put the CIA to shame. Nothing happens on our street without her knowing. I came bearing a slice of her favorite lemon cake. We chatted about the weather and the moral failings of the local squirrels before I leaned in. Mrs. Gable, I said, I have a situation. It involves a little theater. Her eyes lit up. The woman loves drama more than roses. I explained everything. Jessica's exact words. Stop acting like we're married. I didn't embellish. The raw truth was damning enough. By the end, Mrs. Gable was patting my hand, her face set with righteous fury. That shameless little hussy, she snapped. Dawn. From the couch, Gus lifted his massive head, gave a deep, rumbling woof, then promptly went back to sleep. Jessica started calling my phone. I watched it vibrate on top of the pinball machine, took a calm sip of beer, and hit decline. She called. Again. Declined. Again. Declined. 5 times the cycle repeated. The pounding on the door grew louder. Tom, open the door. What is wrong with you? My tea isn't working. I remained silent. This was all part of the show. After another 5 minutes of increasingly frantic banging, she seemed to give up. The doorbell camera showed her pacing across the porch, running her hands through her hair right on cue. A porch light flicked on next door. Mrs. Gable stepped out in her housecoat, holding a watering can. Showtime. Oh, Jessica, dear, is that you? She called, voice dripping with a perfect blend of concern and mild surprise. Mrs. Gable, thank God. Jessica rushed over, flustered. I can't get in. My key isn't working. Is Tom home? I see the lights on. Oh, Tom's home, Mrs. Gable said knowingly. He's had the most wonderful weekend. A real transformation. Jessica frowned. Transformation? What are you talking about? Well, Mrs. Gable said, leaning on her railing as though sharing a juicy secret, he told me the good news. He said you two aren't married, that he doesn't get a say in anything you do. So, he decided to celebrate his newfound freedom. He redecorated the whole house, said it's a man's home now. Very rugged. Jessica's jaw dropped. She just stood there, mouth open, and the best part, Mrs. Gable continued, eyes gleaming with mischief. He got a dog, a big, beautiful boy named Gus, said he wanted a companion who was loyal, and didn't talk back. Isn't that sweet? The look on Jessica's face was priceless, a blend of disbelief, horror, and fury. She spun toward my living room window and pressed her face against the glass. From the couch, I had the perfect view of her reaction as her eyes darted across the scene: the football field rug, the glowing pinball machine, the hulking Steedy. Bernard sprawled across her old spot on the sofa. She let out a sound halfway between a scream and a sob. Then she yanked out her phone and started furiously typing. My screen lit up with a barrage of all-caps rants, paragraphs of fury spilling in one after another. That was my cue. I sent her a single, calm reply. You told me to stop acting like we're married. You said I don't get a say. I agree. This is my house, and you don't get a say in how I live in it. Since we're not married, I returned your non-marital property to a secure location. The address is 123 Storage Way, Unit 42. The code is 1234. You have 1 month. Have a great life. Then I blocked her number. Through the doorbell feed, I watched her read the message. She looked at her phone, looked at the window, looked back at her phone again. Then she let out a scream of pure rage and hurled the device onto my lawn. It was magnificent. A meltdown of operatic proportions. She ranted and raved for another 10 minutes before Tiffany, the harpy, finally pulled up to collect her. The next day, the predictable social media campaign began. Vague posts about betrayal, about men who can't handle strong, independent women. Dramatic stories set to sad music, urging people to know your worth and cut out toxic energy. It was pathetic, but I had one last move left: final update her. Online theatrics were boring, and worse, generic. She was trying to paint me as the villain, but it was like watching someone use a paint-by-numbers kit. I let it go on for 2 days. Then, I decided to add some much-needed context. I didn't engage with her posts. Instead, I made one of my own visible only to our mutual friends. It was a photo album, the first picture. My living room a month ago. The sad beige couch. The pointless bowls. The lifeless aura of a dentist's waiting room. Caption. Before, the second. My living room now. The glorious leather recliner sofa. The football field rug. The glowing pinball machine. And Gus, sprawled out majestically. Caption. After, the last. A selfie of me and Gus on the sofa, both of us looking ridiculously happy. Caption. Decided to redecorate based on my new relationship status. Turns out I'm not married and don't get a say in things, so I'm embracing my freedom. Hashtags. Hashtag bachelor pad. Hashtag dog is my co-pilot. Hashtag no say no stay. The post was a nuclear bomb. The sheer pettiness combined with Gus's overwhelming cuteness was unstoppable. My friends found it hilarious. The story spread fast. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't psycho boyfriend kicks girlfriend out. It was girlfriend tells boyfriend their relationship is a joke and is shocked when he believes her. Jessica's defenders went silent. It's hard to play the victim when the so-called villain is posting adorable selfies with his dog. The fallout hit her hard. She tried staying with Tiffany, but apparently, even a harpy has limits. Within a week, she was back at her parents' place, 3 hours away. She even tried going legal. I received a letter from her lawyer demanding access to my house for wrongfully held property and financial compensation for making her homeless. My lawyer replied with my mortgage statement, proof of sole ownership, and a polite inquiry as to whether Jessica intended to reimburse me for 6 months of rent, utilities, and groceries. We never heard back. The funniest twist came a month later at the dog park. Gus was happily chasing a tennis ball while I chatted with another owner. A woman approached me awkward, hesitant. It was Chardonnay, the third harpy. Hey Tom, she said softly. I wanted to apologize for that night. We were out of line. I shrugged. Jessica said what she said. I just took her at her word. Yeah, I know, she sighed. She's a lot. She called me last week complaining her parents are making her get a job, said it's all your fault for ruining her life. She paused, then glanced at Gus, now trying and failing to fit 3 tennis balls in his mouth. She smiled. Honestly, it looks like you're doing just fine. And she was right. I am doing just fine. My house is no longer a beige prison, it's my home. The pinball machine still doesn't work, but it makes a hell of a conversation piece. And Gus? He's the best roommate I've ever had. Loyal, hilarious, and completely unconcerned about my cooking. I learned something important through all of this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a grand, complicated scheme. It's simply listening to what someone says and believing them. Jessica told me exactly what our relationship meant. She said I didn't get a say. So now, in her life I don't. And in mine, she doesn't either, and with a drooling, 1-0 pound dog by my side, that's a pretty happy ending.